Hi everybody, my name is Alan Heckman. Maybe you've seen my other videos. If not, you should know that I'm a group facilitator and I also work as a teacher training people in group facilitation methods through ICA UK. We get a lot of questions, so we wanted to put together a few videos to answer some of the most frequently asked questions that aren't necessarily in our core course, which is about the methods you can use as a group facilitator. And one of the most commonly asked questions is about what do you do when it's going wrong? Especially, what do you do when one participant in your group, when you're in the role of a facilitator, what do you do when one participant in your group is especially dominant? So I have a few things to say about that, and so we put together this video. It should be just a quick one. I'm going to stick to sort of 4 quick tips that anybody can try out. We've got some more complicated methods and sort of techniques for dealing with different kinds of more complicated situations, but for now we're just going to stick to 4 that we think anybody can try. So what's the deal with somebody who's really dominant in a group situation? Now, your job as a facilitator is to help the whole group participate. And unfortunately, in the worst case, sometimes that means if someone's over participating, you have to find a way to turn down their participation a little bit, hopefully gently, and not turning it off, so that the whole group is able to participate. So how do you do that? How do you do that sort of in a morally justified way without running them over? And how do you do that without turning their participation off or offending them? Well, there's a few things that I have to say about that. And I think the most important thing to start with is thinking a little bit about why they're actually acting that way in the first place. If in their minds, they're mostly not trying to be a problem on purpose. I will tell you that in spite of what you may think, 99% of the time, anybody who's displaying a dominant behavior in a group meeting or a workshop situation is doing so innocently. And by innocently, I mean they're not trying to destroy the process on purpose. Almost all the time, they've got something else going on, and it feels normal and it feels justified to them. So you need to take some time as the group facilitator to figure out where they are coming from, so it makes sense. So I think there's a few core underlying reasons that apply to most people who are doing that oversharing and that over-talking behaviors. One is that they are not feeling heard. So that's maybe the most normal of them. And sometimes even if the group is shouting at that person, we hear you, we understand, they still haven't been feeling heard. So you have to try to figure out ways to do that. And we've got lots of ways, but some of these ways we'll talk about in a minute. Another most common situation is actually when somebody's talking a lot in a group or they're talking almost too much in a group, it's just because they're actually excited about something. They're following their nose, they're talking about whatever's on the forefront of their brain, and they haven't considered about their impact on the group or on your method or on meeting the group's aims. So they're just happy, right? If they're not happy, they're engaged, they're passionate about something. Another one is that fairly often we run into people who might be worried about being judged. And so they're talking a lot as a way of kind of trying to make up for it. Not everybody does that, but some people, when they feel under pressure, they just start talking. And when you're in a group situation, that can be helpful if you can steer them in the right direction. But if their boss is across the room or something, and they feel like they need to perform or they need to speak up, or if they are the boss, they feel like they have to be in charge. So sometimes people are worried about other people's perceptions of them, and they deal with that worry by just continuing to talk, even though it's not the most helpful thing. And then there's finally one other situation, I think, that maybe crosses over with some of these, which is sometimes they've got a person who's angry or feel threatened. Sometimes they are worried about the outcome of the process. They think it's going to, make their job different or harder, or they think it's an outside attack on what they're doing. So they're worried about that, and they're engaging, but in a not very helpful way. So, all right, so you've got these different kinds of situations, and they lead to different kinds of behaviors. So occasionally you get somebody who's really aggressive, who's actually pushy, but for the most part, it'll be just somebody who doesn't shut up, right? So now, our job as a facilitator is to help people not shut up, but sometimes you need to get everybody going. So if there's somebody who talks too much, what can you actually do about it? Well, I've got a few tips and tricks, so I'm going to offer a couple of them to you now. The first one I'm going to say is, I've written up here, it says, adjust your dial up or down. So what does that actually mean? You have a facilitation style, and you're obviously used to, in your facilitation role, doing active listening behaviors, which means, you're looking at the people as they're talking, you're probably nodding along, you might be going, like that. You might even be holding your hand or motioning toward them to indicate that it's their turn to speak. And all of those things are good. That's what you need to do as a facilitator. But if someone's taking a little bit too much and they haven't realized what they're doing to the group, then you can back off of those active listening behaviors and turn your own dial down a little bit. I don't suggest that you go and stare out the window and twiddle your thumbs, but what you can do is actually just back off of those behaviors a little bit. I do that by standing further back from the person who's talking a little bit more, and also by looking around the room at the other faces in the room instead of at them. Half the time when I do that, they're talking to me instead of to the group. And if they see me looking around the room, they then follow my eyes and see their colleagues across the room sitting there bored and irritated, and they run out of steam and don't know why. So it's a great way to sort of gently and in a kind way turn down someone's participation down a little bit. You can actually turn your dial up as well. If I'm doing that, I don't want to step up to somebody and be aggressive, but what I do tend to do is to walk over nearby them like this, they're there, and I speak very loudly, but I don't look at them while I'm doing it, because if I do that, it seems like I'm telling them off. So the alternative is I speak very loudly and look somewhere else in the room, but I'm kind of in their space a little bit, so I'm becoming a bigger character. And either way, if I'm doing that, it's harder to ignore the facilitator, and they tend to run out of steam, and it seems to work. So one thing you can do is to turn your dial up or down. Another thing you can do, and this one is the most simple perhaps, is simply take a break. I can't tell you how important it is to allow everyone in your group to adjust their own blood sugar and caffeine levels, or even just get a moment outside. And I'll tell you that when a room feels really tense and irritable, there's sort of this energy in the room that's not working really well. I can't tell you the number of times when simply taking a break makes it go away. So if somebody's talking too much, you can say, hang on there, we're going to get back on this subject, but I just noticed it's absolutely time for our break. I don't want us to miss that, so let's all come back in a few minutes. If you say something like that, when they come back, you hit the reset button a little bit. It can change things around. If the mood is not good, you can often reset that as well. Let's have another look. Here's one of my favorites. This one says, switch the method to switch the mood. There's a lot of ways you can do this. As a facilitator, you're using some kind of process that you planned out. You probably also planned to make it a little bit adjustable. There's loads of processes that can work in small groups or in plenary with everyone participating at once. And if someone's talking too much, one of the things you can do is, if you're in plenary, switch to small groups. Or if you're in small groups, switch to plenary, and that can change the dynamic around. If you've got somebody who's really aggressive and dominant and you put them in a small group, if you're careful and you've planned ahead of time, you can put them with somebody who can deal with it. But even if you don't, the worst case scenario is that person is then dominating a small group. And most likely they will actually change their behavior because it's a lot harder to be mean or aggressive to one or two people in front of you rather than the whole group, isn't it? So switching the method around, there's different other ways you could switch the method around, but the number one way is actually just switching from small group work to big group work or back, because you can change things around just to change the mood of the room. And finally, I'm going to offer you one final suggestion for how to deal with somebody who's over-participating. Now, this one says, give them a job to do. Now, I don't want to seem really patronizing here. You can't just say, could you do the whiteboard for me? You can maybe do that, but you have to be careful how you do that. I'll leave that up to you. But the key thing here is that when you give somebody a job to do and they accept the role, then they're kind of part of the team. They're invested in the success of whatever it is that you're working on, helping the group meet its aims. And that can make all the difference. It changes them from a confrontational participant to a helpful participant who still gets to express their opinions and still gets to be concerned about their concerns, but does so in a way that's helping everybody try to participate in moving it along. So you can find jobs to do. This also works when somebody's being a bit aggressive because they're the boss and they want to be seen to be in charge. Sometimes if there's a chief executive in the room or the chair of a board, when I'm working as a facilitator, I will say something like, I know that you want everybody to be able to participate. Could you just keep an eye out for everybody and check and tell me later if you're sure everybody's been able to participate. And that will make that chief executive or that chair of the board into a process-aware participant a little bit. And so they'll suddenly be a lot more helpful, at least until they forget. All right, those are 4 quick ones. We've got loads more. I've got loads more ideas, and we do indeed want to make some more videos. So I would love to invite you to comment in the comments of this video. Please do. With your own ideas about what videos we could make, or your own ideas about ways that you've seen facilitators deal successfully with sort of dominant behaviors. So please definitely do that. Also, I would be grateful if you could like our video if you did like it, and certainly subscribe to our videos if you want to make sure you see any of the other videos we put out. And of course, it's worth saying that all of these are all very well, but the actual right answer for dealing with any kind of difficult behaviors in a group situation is to come ahead of time with a really well-designed participatory process. I can't tell you the number of times that a client has said to me, "Oh, Alan, you're going to have a lot of trouble dealing with this group. They talk over each other and they're horrible." But as soon as I walk into the room and I've built a participatory process that they, and I'm promising to them that they will be heard and that I will be an honest and neutral broker supporting them to have the conversation, then suddenly those problems all go away. So I can't guarantee that all of them go away actually, but they tend to go away. So in a way, that's the actual right answer. Design a participatory process. If you want to know more about what a participatory process is, well, definitely the right people to help are ICA, because we've got training courses to teach our group facilitation methods courses, which will give you some ideas about how to do that. All right, that's enough for now. Thank you so much for watching, and please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.